They say America's national parks are the most peaceful places on Earth, but step a little too far off the trail and that peace becomes something else. Something watching, something waiting. Every year, experienced hikers, people who grew up on mountains, who know every rule of survival, walk into the wilderness and simply vanish. No footprints leading away, no torn clothing. No signs of an animal attack, just a backpack left zipped, boots sitting neatly by the water, or a phone still recording with nothing but static in the background.
Rangers search for weeks. Helicopters sweep the valleys. Tracking dogs circle the same area like they're confused, like the scent ends in midair. And when evidence does appear, it's always wrong. Clothes found miles uphill where no one could climb. Fingerprints on places they never touched, or coordinates that don't match any real trail. Some call it accidents, some call it nature. But the more you look into these disappearances, the less natural they seem. Because these cases share patterns no one can explain. People vanish in the same strange pockets of silence, in the same impossible weather shifts, on trails that have taken dozens before them. Tonight, we're going into the stories authorities don't like to talk about, the stories families can't forget, and the mysteries that make hikers swear they will never step into the woods alone again. Welcome to the National Park Disappearances that no one can explain.
Jason didn't come to the park looking for danger. He came for a weekend escape, something simple, something quiet, something that felt like a break from the noise of real life. Just trees, just open sky, just a trail he'd walked a dozen times before. But here's the thing no one tells you. Most people who vanish in America's national parks aren't thrill seekers or beginners. They're the ones who know the rules, who check the weather twice, who tell their families exactly when they'll be back. People who don't make stupid mistakes. Jason was exactly like that. An experienced hiker, familiar with this specific trail system. The kind of person who carried gear that looked brand new, but skills that were anything but. He had a full map, a backup map, 2 phones, and even a laminated ranger-issued trail guide, just in case. The morning he arrived, the forest looked perfect, the kind of perfect that makes you want to take a picture, even though you've seen 1,000 trees just like it. Sunlight catching the tops of the pines, shadows stretched thin across the dirt path, the air cool enough that each breath felt clean. Nothing strange, nothing off, nothing that hinted at what the next few hours would bring. Jason laughed to himself as he unloaded his backpack, shaking out straps and adjusting gear. A small breeze ruffled his hair. Everything felt normal, painfully, perfectly normal. He followed the trail markers with the same casual confidence as any hiker on any day. Checked his map, not because he was lost, but because he was organized. Drank water, noted how cold the stream looked, and snapped a few pictures of the sunlight on the moss-covered logs. And yet, somewhere between those tall pines and the soft dirt path, there was a moment. A small, almost forgettable moment when something shifted. Not enough to alarm him, not enough to register. Just enough that if you watched the footage back frame by frame, you'd notice it. The forest light dimmed, not darkened, just softened. The breeze slowed. The air turned still. Still in a way you don't normally find in the open. But Jason didn't notice. Why would he? He was focused on the trail, on the hike, on the next bend. From the outside, watching that moment feels like seeing someone step over a line they don't know exists. A quiet boundary between the world they trust and the one waiting deeper in the woods. But for Jason, it was just another step on just another trail. Boot crunching rhythmically, breathing steady, eyes scanning the path ahead, unaware that somewhere, minutes or miles ahead, something had already changed. He thought he was entering a national park. He thought this hike would end like every other. with tired legs, full memories, and a drive home under the evening sun. He had no idea this would be the last time he'd be seen. And at this point, there was still nothing unusual. No warning, no fear, no sign that anything was wrong. Just Jason stepping deeper into the woods and the forest quietly watching him disappear into its shade.
They say the forest always warns you if you know how to listen. But the strangest part, most people only realize the warning after it's already too late. Jason had been hiking for years. Long, brutal treks, unpredictable weather, remote trails. He'd seen storms roll in like walls of glass, heard trees groan under winter ice, even spotted a mountain lion once from less than 50 feet away. Nothing scared him, nothing surprised him. But today, something felt different. At first, it was small, so small that most hikers would have ignored it. A breeze, cold, sharp, cut across the trail, even though the air around him was perfectly still. His breath fogged for a moment, then didn't, like the temperature dropped just for him, just for one step. He stopped, looked around. The forest was silent. Too silent. No birds, no rustle of branches, not even the distant hum of insects. He tried to shake it off, told himself it was altitude or maybe the thick canopy overhead. But then he noticed something else, something much harder to explain. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out. No signal, obviously. But the screen was recording on its own, a 5-second clip of nothing but a low, vibrating hum, a hum he hadn't heard with his own ears. Jason deleted it, confused, and kept moving. The trail began to look wrong, not different in a dramatic way, just subtly off. The same pine tree appeared twice. At least, that's what it felt like. Same bend in the trunk, same scar on the bark, same patch of moss creeping along the roots. He checked his map, checked his compass, checked the trail markers painted on the rocks. Everything said he was going the right way. Everything looked like he was going the wrong way. A few minutes later, he found footprints. Not his, not fresh, not old either. Just strange. Like someone had walked barefoot on the trail, but each step was too deep, like the person weighed far more than a normal human should. He followed them for a moment, just long enough to realize the footsteps stopped at a tree trunk. Not around it, not behind it, at it, as if the person's last step ended against solid wood. Jason backed up, heart suddenly pounding. He told himself it was soil erosion, a trick of the ground, a hiker wearing unusual shoes. He told himself anything that made sense. Because what didn't make sense was the sound that followed. A single click, like a camera shutter, right behind him. He spun around. Nothing. Just trees, stretching endlessly in every direction. He waited, listened. Nothing happened for a long, heavy moment. Then the forest exhaled. A warm gust this time. Too warm. His backpack straps shifted as if someone had brushed past him. A pine needle fell from above, landing on his shoulder. Jason whispered, "Hello? Anyone there?" But the forest didn't answer with a voice. It answered with movement. Not rustling leaves, not swaying branches, but the faintest shadow sliding between the trees. A quick, impossible shift, like something large changed position just outside his peripheral vision. He blinked. It disappeared. He stepped back, and that's when he noticed the smell. Metallic, sharp, cold, like old pennies dipped in lake water. A smell that didn't belong in the middle of sunlit woods. Jason didn't know it yet, but this was the first sign. Not danger, not attack. Just the disturbance. The quiet signal that something in the forest had taken interest in him, and it was waiting for him to take just a few more steps.
Jason's breath hitched as he stood frozen on the trail, the echo of that impossible shadow lingering in his peripheral vision. His backpack felt heavier, though nothing had changed. Every instinct screamed at him, "Turn back! Run! Don't look!" but the trail stretched ahead like a thread pulling him deeper into the unknown. And then it happened. A sudden, unnatural silence washed over him. Not the soft hush of the forest, not the quiet you expected dawn. This was complete. No birds, no insects, no rustling leaves, not even the sound of his own heartbeat in his ears. Jason swallowed. He tried to call out, "Hello? Anyone there?" Nothing. He opened his mouth again, tried to scream, but no sound came. His throat moved, his chest expanded and contracted. He was breathing, yet nothing emerged. Panic surged. He spun around, arms flailing, searching for anything that could explain it. The shadows between the trees thickened. Not with light, not with wind, but with something else. A presence, an awareness, something observing, waiting. He stumbled backward, feet slipping over loose roots. The forest seemed to stretch and warp around him, trees bending just slightly as if the entire woods had leaned in to watch. Jason's phone buzzed, automatic recording mode. He grabbed it, hoping for some rational explanation, but the screen showed only a static waveform, a low, vibrating hum. No voices, no noise, just nothing. And then, in the corner of his eye, movement. So subtle, it could have been a trick of the light. He turned sharply. Nothing. He stepped forward, a whisper of motion directly ahead. And then he vanished. No scream, no struggle, no sound at all. One moment he was there, gripping a root, trying to steady himself. The next, gone. No footprints, no signs of displacement. Nothing disturbed the trail, the leaves, the dirt, as if he had been erased. Not kidnapped, not hidden, not lost. Simply removed. Hours later, search teams combed the area. Helicopters circled overhead, shining lights through the thick canopy. Dogs tracked patterns that made no sense, circling, stopping abruptly, refusing to continue. Authorities found his backpack lying neatly on the trail, boots placed next to it as though someone had carefully set them down. His phone was there too, still recording, capturing nothing. Every sensor, every human eye, every tracking method failed to locate him. It was as if the forest had swallowed him whole and then sealed itself off, leaving only the faint hum of static in its place. Those who would later recount the story said the air still felt different at that spot, heavy, expectant, almost alive. And though Jason had vanished, the silence stayed behind, waiting for the next person to wander too far. No explanations, no clues, no evidence. Just the trail, just the forest. Just the lingering sense that someone or something was always watching, always waiting, and always, silently, choosing who it would take next.
By the time night fell, the search was in full swing. Rangers, volunteers, and canine units flooded the trailhead, their headlamps slicing through the dense shadows of towering pines. Every radio buzzed with reports, every flashlight beam danced over moss-covered roots and fallen logs. But no one found Jason. The first dogs hit the trail, experienced trackers, their noses trained on months of field work. They sniffed again, and then stopped, right at the exact spot Jason had disappeared. It wasn't that they lost the scent, it was as if the scent itself had vanished. Some dogs refused to move forward, others circled in tight, unnerving patterns, whining, tail tucked, refusing to advance into an area no human dared step. Rangers exchanged worried glances. Not just unusual behavior, impossible behavior. They began marking points on the map, plotting where Jason had last been seen. GPS coordinates didn't match the trail system. A ridge that appeared on maps was gone, completely, covered with dense undergrowth that no one remembered seeing before. Volunteers found his boots and backpack, exactly where he had left them. Or had they? Something about the placement seemed deliberate. A single shoe tilted slightly, the laces tied neatly, the water bottle standing upright as though someone had arranged it. A ranger bent down to pick up a camera Jason had been using. The screen flickered. Video footage showed the trail behind him, empty, Then the hum, the same low vibration Jason had felt, creeping into the frame. The hairs on the back of the rangers' necks stood on end. They moved cautiously, scanning the trees for any sign of movement. The forest was alive in a way they couldn't explain. Shadows shifted where the moonlight shouldn't have reached. Leaves rustled with no breeze. Every sense screamed, something is wrong. Yet every clue was contradictory. A field investigator from the state's search and rescue team noted something chilling, footprints that appeared abruptly and then ended in mid-air, soil displaced as though someone weighed hundreds of pounds, yet there was no body, no tree knocked over, no sign of struggle. And then came the whispers, soft at first, almost dismissible, but growing. A subtle murmur carried through the forest, like the pines themselves were whispering secrets they weren't meant to share. Some rangers reported feeling their hairs on their arms stand up, their knees weaken. The dogs barked and ran in circles, refusing to enter the exact zone Jason had vanished from. Hours turned into the dead of night. Radios caught faint, unexplainable static that pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. Search teams tried to triangulate it, thinking it was interference, but the pulses came in perfect intervals, repeating across every frequency, no matter the channel. One veteran tracker muttered under his breath, "It's like the forest is alive, watching us, mocking us." By morning, the exhausted teams gathered at the trailhead. The area had been combed from ridge to river, every bush overturned, every log lifted, every rock turned over. Yet Jason was gone. No trace, no sign, not a single clue that made logical sense. The only evidence left behind, the trail itself, seemed altered. Branches that had been upright were bent over, pointing inward toward a central point. Moss that had once carpeted the ground in green patches now appeared stripped away in geometric shapes. Even the GPS devices reported impossible readings, coordinates that didn't exist, trails that looped back impossibly, altitudes that fluctuated by hundreds of feet within seconds. The search teams left the area shaken, confused, and exhausted. Every member would later admit in private that the forest didn't just hide Jason, it seemed to take him, and it decided how much of itself to show them. They could not explain it. They could only document it. Pictures, maps, and reports, none of which aligned with reality. And for weeks after, those who had been there described a strange feeling whenever they spoke about the incident, a creeping unease, a sensation that the forest remembered, that it knew what they had seen and what they hadn't. Jason's disappearance became a case file, a story whispered in ranger stations, a puzzle the forest had left deliberately unsolvable. And even now, every time someone walks that trail, the forest seems to pulse with the memory of that night, waiting, watching, silent, but far from empty.
Search teams were gone. Helicopters no longer circled. The dogs had returned to kennels, still whimpering at the thought of that impossible trail. Yet the air on that path remained different, heavy, waiting. Jason was gone. No body, no scratch marks, no footprints, nothing. Authorities labeled it a missing hiker case, filed reports, and moved on. But anyone who had been there knew better. The official narrative didn't match the physical facts. The trail markers were intact, yet somehow rearranged. Branches bent in patterns that defied natural explanation. The low hum Jason recorded, no scientific instrument could replicate it. Locals whispered about the area, calling it cursed or haunted, but there were no spirits to see, no ghosts to photograph, just a presence, a memory, embedded in the very soil, in the way shadows shifted when the sun moved. Investigators tried theories, geological anomalies, magnetic distortions, infrasound, even experimental technology tests from decades earlier. None of it explained the vanishings. None of it explained the sudden, impossible disappearance of a skilled, careful hiker like Jason. Months passed. The official files gathered dust. The trail was deemed safe, though no one in their right mind returned without a companion. Rumors persisted, quietly at first, then louder, about hikers who never came back, about trails that led into nothing, and about a forest that remembers. The thing about this forest is it's patient, it waits, and it doesn't need to be loud. The silence itself is its warning, lingering long after you've left. People who hiked the trail later reported strange sensations, sudden chills, feelings of being watched, fleeting shadows where none could exist, phones glitching, compasses spinning, GPS coordinates that made no sense, all remnants of the memory of Jason's disappearance, all reminders that the forest keeps score. And yet, for the world outside, nothing changed. The maps remained the same, the brochures promised adventure and beauty, hikers stepped onto the trail unaware. But the truth lingered. The forest was not forgiving. The forest did not forget. Jason's case remains unsolved. Files are incomplete, evidence contradicts evidence, and the silence that claimed him still waits for the next hiker, the next curious soul to step too far, to notice too much, and to vanish without a trace. If there's one thing we've learned from this story, it's that some places in the world don't just hide secrets, they hold them patiently, endlessly, and without mercy. If you want more chilling stories like Jason's, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell to join the Shadowline Mysteries community. Share this video with friends who dare to explore the unknown, and leave a comment below. What do you think happened to Jason? Was it the forest or something far stranger? Remember, on Shadowline Mysteries, the silence isn't empty, it's listening.